Hola, hola.
Hi,
Hi, how are you?
good. How are you, Aimé?
I'm good, I'm good. You arrived before me to the party. Welcome.
Thank you.
How are you
Thank
doing?
you for the invitation.
No,
Um,
thank you so much for being with us. We're thrilled to have you in the studio in this series of talks and to be discussing your work a little bit. So thank you so much.
Thanks. No, thank you. I'm happy and excited.
Yes,
First time I do something like this, so like a live
no,
on Instagram. So
it'll be fun. It'll be fun.
yeah,
So, I don't know if you want to share with the people a little bit where you are.
yeah. Right now I'm in my studio. Um, I'm in my
In New
studio
York?
in
Yes.
New York. Yeah, in Brooklyn.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I'm from Chile, Santiago.
Mm-hmm.
And I moved here 4 years ago.
I know, I know.
And yeah, so yeah, right now I'm pretty much working from here. And even though I go back often to Chile,
I
like
know
my
this.
work lives there.
Actually, we're going to be discussing some series that were inspired actually by recent visits to town to Chile.
Hmm. Hello. Sorry, I
So
think it
let's
was like
see, one
a
second.
dummy.
Natalia Campos. No problem.
Oh, great.
So I don't know if you want to share with us a little bit what are these credit cards?
Yeah. So those credit cards are from a show I did in Mexico, the one that is portrayed in the picture right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that specific card, it's this type of fictional card I did of Carlos Salinas de Gortari,
Mm-hmm.
that it's uh, the president that Mexico had when um, the NAFTA agreement was signed, and actually he signed it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's part of this show I did that it's surrounding that the situation that happened, and kind of like from there this whole show start building up. So
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, um, and it's cool because that element of the card actually it's I mean for me it's a very important type of like element that I consider almost like as a folklore element from the country I come from. I mean, it's of course a global one, but from the history of Chile, it's kind of like it's part of the folklore somehow, contemporary folklore somehow.
So maybe we can tell the audience when you started doing the credit card series. I mean, and what was the point behind it?
When or what was
When? Yeah, yeah,
when?
yeah. And what was the purpose of working with the credit cards? And then we can delve into the present series.
Um, Somehow, like my intention has been to kind of like understand a type of landscape, to put it in somehow abstract terms, but in
Mm-hmm.
more particular terms, I find that the technology of the credit card it's a good vehicle to talk about wider situations, particularly like the history of where I come from, or different histories that um, can be embodied by this common object that everybody carries,
Mm-hmm.
and it can be relatable to anyone.
And at the same time, it's interesting because this card in particular, so to kind of explain it to everybody, you did a series of credit cards with the name of certain presidents. Maybe we can see the following one. right?
Yeah.
If Natalia can, we have Enrique Peña Nieto, this is López Obrador. So this is a whole series that you did in Mexico, so it's Mexican presidents.
Yeah, they're I did the credit cards of all the presidents of, let's say, the modern Mexico, you know.
Yes. Let's go back to the credit cards. And also I wanted to ask you, because I think it's interesting that also you start with one for Carlos Salinas, which is the president that signed the NAFTA agreement. And for anybody who for the first time is hearing about Ignacio's work, he follows a lot of economical process and work around finance and the history of economics in the Americas, right? And I think it's interesting that the one that you started is about Carlos Salinas, which is the signature of NAFTA, but it's also around the same time that probably the device credit card starts becoming more popular and more like, you know, like more common among everybody. And this idea of also, you know, and NAFTA as an historical moment is also a consolidation of this idea of free trade. And free trade is also about the dematerialization of finance, right? And the credit card is a step towards that. It's something.
Totally. I mean, I agree completely. And also, like, that time was so important for the Southern Americas, right? Because of how, like, this, like, somehow borders open up to the transnational trades and everything. But yeah, the card does the same thing. And also carries all this information of everyone, right? So
Yes. And what are the numbers? Is there a logic to the numbers you chose?
yeah, I always, somehow in my work, I always try to invent my own logics and apply them to whatever I'm doing. But in this case, to emulate the object of the card, I use like information from actually historical information. Like, for example, the number it's the population number of the time that Carlos, in this case, this picture, Andrés López Obrador, it's governing, and the other numbers is the beginning of the government time, and then the last one is the supposedly the end, right?
Okay, wonderful. And then, I mean, you showed in that same exhibition, you show the watches, no? So
Yeah,
go
I
to
did
see them.
a series of watches for the exhibition too. And
where was this exhibition?
In Fundación Marso, it's called, in Mexico City.
And this was in 2019, right?
Yes, 2019. So, so I was wandering in the streets of Mexico City, and I was with my friend at this tiangi, right? This like flea market, and then suddenly I cross into this watch, actually the Carlos Salinas de Gortari watch that probably is gonna show up soon, and it really grabbed my attention because I thought on this kind of like somehow technology that was part of this historical moment, but at the same time, I thought that there was something corrupt in the object somehow, and because it was part of this political campaign somehow. So actually, that watch was kind of like when I understood what I wanted to do for the whole show. So
maybe we can pass them and see a few examples. We have this one, which is Fuerza México. So they're made for each political campaign, and there seems to be a tradition, especially in Mexico, but I know you found this in the US also. This is for the Green Party.
I'm doing a new version for the US now. but these ones are for Mexico. Yeah, I mean, after that I did like, I found considerable like 10 watches. I made someone to somehow hack into the watches and let them tick in a specific time forever. So the watches were somehow alive, but they were hacked to be stuck forever, ticking in a specific time that then I used to describe a specific history related to, for example, let's say in this watch, Carlos Salinas de Gortari, right? So the watch that we're seeing right now, it has the dates when Carlos Salinas de Gortari became president and then when he ruled. So I used that to talk about a kind of like a wider situation. And specifically in this watch, the NAFTA agreement.
Is the hour in which the NAFTA agreement was.
Yeah.
Let's see the other ones. What other times are you marking?
Like from scratch, I can't like really remember all the times that I described, but there's like a lot of because I work on this information going to el Archivo Nacional de Mexico. And
yes,
yeah, and so there's like a lot of kind of like historical information, but at the same time I found something that I could like break it into a meaning beyond, you know, that specific time. For example, now I remember one that that Carlos Salinas de Gortari watch, I described when the specific time that he signed the NAFTA agreement, but then also in the same hall that he signed the agreement, he made the birthday party for her daughter and he invited Luis Miguel to perform in that same space. So stuff like that, kind of like it works like that.
I love it, and I love this idea of also using the watch, which is a device tracking, you know, a time tracking device to mark these historical like moments, you know, and the specific hours of these moments. Let's see a few of them. Let's pass.
Ernesto Cedillo. Yeah, I was with Matias Solar when I found that watch. Yeah, he introduced me to this whole like underground market situation.
Did you have to like search for them like carefully, or did you just like, you know, went to eBay and some sort of version of eBay?
No, I was all physical and presential, and that was the fun part of it because I was able to visit all these places, and we went to crazy places with Matias. We went to like, I can't remember the name of the tianguis right now, but he made me go to this like tianguis that was like, tianguis like a flea market, right? That was like an hour from Ciudad de Mexico. It was huge. We had a good day. And it was like kind of like blocks and blocks full of junk and things, you know. And
maybe if we pass through images, people can see a little bit of the scenery of where you find them.
Yeah, like that.
It's just going through them.
Yeah, we went through them. Oh, and he's one of three person who worked with me hacking the watches for them to stop in a specific time ticking.
Oh, that's very interesting. Of course, you had to hack them to like kind of like stop the battery.
Watchmakers.
It's not just removing the battery. There's a specific like hacking. Wow.
Yeah. I mean, that part of the battery, I also wanted to make it. It was hard, actually, because the mechanism is so small. As I mean, as in the picture, kind of like you can see that they had to. We somehow put like little pieces of like metal for them to get stuck. But yeah,
That's very interesting.
yeah,
It's almost
so
like
they
you have
can
to put
last.
on an obstacle to stop time and to make people focus on that. That's
Yeah,
very
because yeah, it's at a layer, and that was the room where those cards, the president cards, were placed.
I think it's interesting because I don't know if we can zoom in, but it's important for people to understand that there's a screen with a reading device, right?
Yeah.
So in that screen, people can actually, these credit cards have a function. They're not just, you know,
Yes. Yeah. Those cards, you can actually use them and access through
swap.
a reading machine. Like, is this one actually that is attached to a screen? You can access to the encrypted information of each card that each card has. That is a text.
Maybe you can describe what what type of information they usually include. If we can
Yeah.
go back to the previous one, Natalia, if we can go to the credit cards.
Thank you. The information. So the information I chose after going to that National Archive and kind of like meticulously try to find information and like somehow make it work together. I wanted to use something that contrasts all these like hardcore historical, like very like stiff, like moments and data with something more poetical to open it up. Like I like to kind of like work with, let's say, for example, two elements that they collide each other to create a third one. So for that, and something that it makes sense and struck my attention, and it was for me beautiful to find. It was this book of EZNL, from all the comunicados that Subcomandante Marcos did after the rising of Chiapas that he commanded at the same right after the NAFTA agreement was signed. And Subcomandante Marcos was this like somehow poetic figure. And his writings are quite poetic, so I was like, wow. And they were a lot of question directed to the government, to the presidents, and to the authorities. So I wanted to use these questions for those cards, and it worked pretty well because they almost read as poems, and people could like access to them and create this like very like kind of like choreography within the room and the piece, and I'm very interested in that right now.
I think that was very interesting. I remember when I first saw this series, when we first met in an art fair, you were showing a different set of cards that when you would swipe them, they would show fragments of economical neoliberal theory, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And cards had the name of the author on it. Is that right?
Yeah, those cards are the first ones I did from a show I did here actually in New York in Interstate Projects, and those cards have embossed names of books from this group of economists called Mont Pelerin Society. And those cards had text from excerpts from those books. I think we're gonna get there, like kind of like.
Okay, let's keep going through the images. So now we go back to previous works. This is the installation, and this is another series of works. I don't know what you want to tell us about this.
Cool. I like this work a lot. Actually, I haven't seen it in a while. It's those. So this work I made it in Flora Arts Natura. That is a residency in Colombia, run by Jose Roca. And it was amazing to do that residency there in Colombia. I spent like 6 months there. And this piece, for me, it's interesting because I also had a kind of like an approach of going out to the street to find these boxes that had these specific drawings from several objects, right? And the shapes of them, I wanted to remain or to recall somehow the shape of a letter. So then I could like create this like alphabet with them. So it was also a fun piece to make because I had to go out and like find these boxes, right, and cut them out. And I remember also going to, like, at the end it was so hard to find them, so I had to go to Home Depot with like a razor blade and start cutting out some. But yeah, the collection, I like that piece a lot. I have good memories of making it.
That's great. Let's go to the next slide, which also has a sense of alphabet and like fonts and play with letters.
Yeah. This is from the first show I did in, like, my first show in Santiago. I like this piece a lot. It's somehow, it's like, for me now, when I see it, it has this like sculptural value that I think, because it's so thin. It's like this piece of kind of like a window, right? Glass, and it has this like hermetic encryption in it, and like it's almost floating, but it somehow has this weight that is not even there, like the meaning of the phrase that it can be read, you know. So it's that abstraction of language somehow that then I think often, and in other type of words too, works. But yeah, I like it. I like it as thinking of like in very like classical terms of sculpture, like wave, space, and how that relate to
There's something
language.
about the shadows of it. And let's go to the book, which is also a device that you've explored a lot in the next slide.
Yeah, I did that one in Colombia. And the same residency I was in Bogota, in Flora. And like when that building of the Jose Roca, it's so beautiful. You can see the city of Bogota from many windows. And the like Bogota architecture, it's, for me at least, to put it in simple terms, it was like conformed by bricks and mountains, like green mountains. So that's the landscape I did for it. That was what I was seeing from the window.
And what about this series of books?
So it's cool that you put first that book, because I had the chance to talk about the bricks, right? And this was one of the first book I did of this kind, And that was right after that residency.
Mm-hmm.
And these ones also are somehow part of a landscape, right? But are a landscape that is more connected to the folklore of Chile somehow,
Mm-hmm.
of the history of the modern history of Chile, the one that kind of like I relate to. And that's a Friedrich Hayek. It has the inscriptions of Friedrich Hayek. That is one of the main configurators somehow of the neoliberal ideology, and one of the leads of Montpellerin society, this society I was talking about. And yeah, so that's one of the first ones I did with that one too. I think it was 2016 or yeah.
And you did a whole series of these that we have 3 to see. Maybe we can go to the following one. But I would love if you explain people, you're obviously like replicating these, you know, as a break, these books, like as a break of a construction of something else. Obviously, that's something that is in the air when you discuss them. But also, I mean, I wonder, I mean, what about the hole in the middle? I would love if you can share with them why a hole.
Yeah, I like the hole because it's somehow a part that is missing. Also, I like it to think it as a window, and also I like to think it as an aggression to the book too. And I like to see them as these bricks, but part of this somehow kind of like very modernist looking, like architecture bricks, you know, like the Chile, like it's pretty much comes from like this boom that, I mean, the aesthetics come from this boom of Chilean architecture had like 3 years ago. And it was all cement and very like modernist, like European looking. And I just like to play around with that and connect it to these other books from this, you know, like oppressive ideologies. And I find architecture can be very oppressive too.
And what about these ones?
Well, that's a cover of a book I did. I think the cement book I did about from that cover, it's now in a Sagrada Mercancía with my friends, Sagrada Mercancía in Chile. They have them around there, stored somewhere.
Let's go to the following one. I want to make sure that we see like
those are the bricks. It's like a collection of bricks that inspires me to make the other bricks.
And what about this one? This is an installation. Where did you do this?
We jumped to this show that I did with Antonella Medina in Mexico. She had this project called Proyectos de Arte Independiente Público. Yeah, and it was in this huge how do you call it? Estacionamiento, parking
A parking lot,
building in the center of Ciudad de Mexico. And then we displayed several videos, and each video remains again a letter. It's like the same exercise I did with those boxes cutouts, but now all the letters, let's say the matrix of why I chose those letters is that phrase that it says la distancia cordial de todas las cosas.
And you would build the letters through films that you did through the city, right?
Yeah. So it's this relation to the phrase into the space, and that question of what is between those things. That's why it's la distancia cordial de todas las cosas, the cordial distance between all things in English.
And maybe we can see the following one, which is a beautiful piece. You have this little
Romboy.
card.
That was in Colombia too, in the same residency I was talking about before.
And maybe you can see what you did with that little card in the following images.
Yeah. So we did a video. So Romboy, it's the acronym of roundabout or round point in Bogota or Colombian slang, right? And I like the idea of that acronym. I was like, wow, it's so cool. They have so, when you know, like when you go to a place and they say, oh, they talk so different Spanish than from here, from there, you know, like. So I was like, romboy is a cool word. And then I realized that romboy, it means like from round point, right? This like modernist junction again. So I was like wondering if that's very nearby Flora. So I found that there, and it was like it was ridiculous actually, to be honest. That
Yeah, we can see it on the next image. It's a quite absurd, like urban situation.
Yeah,
So
totally, exactly.
it's a roundabout that doesn't have like an aisle or a park or a fountain, but it's just like determining, and this is for circulation, right?
Yeah, for circulation, but nobody respected that roundabout. Or so
You did a video. What are the fruits in the little cart? What are
yeah,
you
no. So
taking?
because at the end,
The
like
little, yeah.
yeah, hello. So yeah, I'm at the same time I found this. I was trying to understand like the city of Bogota, and like as I told before, like the landscape, and something was struck my attention and was interesting at that time. I think it was 2015, that the informal economy of the street was being somehow for first time attacked by the authorities, or try to modify it and tax somehow by the governor. But it wasn't a really I mean, you know, like informal economies in general are subject to larger problems, right? Kind of like translation of larger problems of, like, you know, poverty, etc. So there was a lot of things happening surrounding that idea of the informal economy of Bogota, which is pretty strong, and somehow it's part of the identity of the city, strongly. So I'm the person who was always selling mangoes around Flora. I became friends with them, and I explained him the project, and I said if he wanted to be part of it, I could, because the Flora gave us a little stipend, so I was like, I can pretty much like pay you for the day, right? And I can like let's say use the mangoes for the video, and I pay the mangoes too, but you can sell them again. And he was like so down. So we did that video, and the now what we're seeing is it's part of the particularity of the card that he made, and a lot of cards in Bogota city that of these fruit sellers, that they create their own like sound system in them. It's like very do-it-yourself sound system, and I fell in love with this. And I like another layer of that video is that in Bogota, in Colombia, they had the first record label from the Southern Americas. Like it's called Fuentes, Discos Fuentes, and they have this like an amazing record label of cumbia. It's the best cumbias come from Discos Fuentes. Like all the, like, for example, like now Mexican cumbias, like rebajados and all that stuff, comes like it's all Discos Fuentes. And it's old record label from like, it started on the 1894, I think, very old. So that's it. I was like, this is an amazing place to start understanding the identity of this place. But like short stories, I made loops of different cumbia songs from this record label, and we did this type of ritual that Pedro, who was the owner of the car, surrounded that roundabout, somehow like exorcising it with these cumbia loops.
Wonderful. Let's go to the following project. I want to make sure we get a chance to discuss them all, or as many as we can. This is a beautiful installation that you did here, right?
Thank you. Yeah, I like it. Yeah, so here I combine different elements, like the books.
Where was this shown before I come
in? This was shown here in New York, in Interstate Projects.
Okay, perfect. Wonderful.
And
yeah, tell us a little bit about the structure. Let's go to the previous one to see the structure. I would love you to comment on that staircase that you built up.
Yeah. So the staircase, so this show is here in New York, right? And I wanted to make that staircase because the
escalators
are invented here in New York. They were invented here in New York. So it's a technology that was invented here, right? And then traveled the world, right? And I thought it was very similar on how this ideology also traveled the world. In the 70s in Chile, with the Chicago Boys and Milton Friedman, that was part of Mont Pelerin Society. So in this show, I chose covers of books from only authors of Mont Pelerin Society, and that's kind of like the starting point.
And maybe we can go through the exhibition photos and we'll be back to that project. So these are some of the books that you mentioned before. And here is a set of credit cards with, is this a set of credit cards of the Mexican presidents also?
No, those are the ones that are embossed with the names of these books. So it was cool because it's connected with the books that are on the floor, these like sculptural objects, and it kind of like rounded the idea of the circle, the part that is missing, because it completed it with this excerpt that each card has encrypted in the magnetic strip. So people could access somehow to this information now, like reinterpreting the syntax and creating a new one in this choreography, right? So somehow for me that was kind of like a free association poetry that had the installation itself. I liked it.
Let's go to the following one. We saw this series, and let's go 2 slides more to see a little bit then The material dynamics. One more slide, please. I think that's very interesting. It's like a broken version with your name on it, right?
Yeah, I that one actually in that show for it's from 2015, I think, 16. It was in Panama in Diablo Rosso. It's a gallery there. So that was the first time I did these credit cards, or like I was like, wow, I want to do a show about credit cards. And I asked my friends, close friends, to give me their credit card pictures. And I did this sculptural work and these paintings that I wanted to kind of like do this like landscape of ruins, you know? And I wanted to be very like kind of like these fragments to like be almost like, again, that idea of like the sculpture of the presence, right? Like for me it was almost like what it was not there, it was as interesting too. So
Let's
yeah.
see the following one, because there's something about the ruins in the paintings. Maybe you can describe a little bit what you were doing. These are raw paintings in which you repainted sections.
Yeah, it's a very, yeah, they're very simple paintings that have fragments of the same credit cards, basically translated into these canvases. But I was inspired by this project of Giovanni Battista Piranesi, like an Italian architect from the 1820s, did a book that is called Campo Marzio, and he was hired to create, at the time, he was hired to create a plan for Rome, a new plan for Rome. And what he did, he created this book, very big, thick book, and he gave it, and it was all like a speculative project. It was not an architectural like square, you know, like urban planning. It was a completely open speculative project. And that was the inspiration from that show. So I felt that what he said in once, of course, everybody was like, "What are you doing? You know, like how is it possible you did that?" And he said, "Well, you know, well, he wanted to kind of like, and I think it's something that we talk right now. But at that time he said that he wanted to somehow let a space for what is not there, so people can imagine, right, collectively, how to build something new in that time in a decaying Rome." So that kind of like move was very inspiring to know, and I thought on the fragments and the ruins as this like vehicle to make think what is not there and be able to imagine.
So I want to make sure that we have enough time to comment what you're making and what you're showing soon in Canada. I don't know if you want to share with people about your upcoming project, but in the next slide, we can see a new series that you've been doing in which you're including photography into the cars. And I'll share with people what these photographs are. We have like around 10 minutes.
Okay. So this is this comes from my last project I'm working on, and I've been working for it for a year now. First time I worked for so long in one project, but it was pretty circumstantial, of course, because of the pandemic and all of that. But it started by going to Chile. I had to go to renew my visa, and then because of the ongoing protests, right, that were occurring in Chile, a lot of financial institutions were boarding up, and because of also the embassy was very delayed on my visa, I had to like make myself working something, and I was so struck by how the city changed too from since I left, and I think to understand it, what happened, I start taking pictures, almost like you know, like a tourist in my own city or something. So I start. I chose those banks because they were perfect for me to photograph. They were steady. It was not people. They changed completely the landscape of the city. So
And also
I
how,
did like I photographed like 300 of them.
and then and then you came back to New York right before the pandemic, and then after being locked in lockdown for a while. I mean, when you go out, it's the Black Lives Matter movement, and the whole downtown of New York is also boarded up. So you start seeing this similitude between Santiago and New York, your home,
Yeah,
you
totally.
know, your new home, and this like similitude in the urban landscape, in this idea of boarding up.
Totally.
Something very interesting about this, I don't want to advance too much on the project because I know you're going to be showing it soon, but I really encourage people to go see it, is this contrast about the type of institution that is being boarded up in the two cities, and you know, and how that tells a lot about the type of economical problem that the places are having. Is like mostly luxury stores in New York, and it's banks in Santiago. And there's also like this like very even creative and very expensive like devices of boarding up that you portray. And I think it's amazing that you're putting that on a credit card, which is a device that we all use for shopping and that we all get at the bank. So, you know, the device of the card is connecting the things that you're portraying in the photographs in a very natural and like organic way that had to do with the, you know, the series of events that took place first in Chile when you went visit, and then in New York when, you know, after the pandemic. Maybe we see the sketch of the installation so people get a sense of how this is going to be shown, this series, in the next slide, Natalia. And I think it's very interesting also that you have this like this type of display that we saw before also in other works before you work with the credit cards, in which the credit card is like at, you know, at the perfect height to be grabbed, but at the same time it's almost shown like a luxury item would be shown in a store, in which you have it like very like handy and at the same time like presented as a valuable object. There's a very interesting tension, and somebody asked here, Paco Milian asked, like, you know, I work with cards all day. What do the card itself meant in your work or mean in your work? Why credit cards? And I think it's very interesting, this like idea of like that is like this very precious and valuable object, but at the same time that value, I mean, you kind of like refer us back and put value into the materiality of the object, which is nothing. It's just a piece of plastic.
Yeah, I mean, it's an object that somehow can talk about many things for me. I think it's part of a history, right? Of, let's say, in Chile, the credit card was brought by Sebastián Piñera, which is the actual president, and there is like all this folklore surrounding that history of how it was brought into Chile. These like stories that are so part of the identity, right, of of my generation and Chile in general, and I think that also the card to somehow in the history of currency, it plays an iconic role because it's the edge, or like it's in the middle point of the matter and the abstraction of the electronic world, because it contains somehow electronic money. So within that, all the problematics that has the electronic world, the internet, and how we perceive our goods and the world, and how that speed and again abstraction rules everything. So I think it's a good vehicle for
absolutely. And then Felipe is asking where and when it's going to be the show.
The first,
the new show in Canada.
In Canada, yeah, in a Cooper Call, in a gallery in Toronto. The first presentation. But Felipe, you can come to my studio.
Don't tell that to people. Like, more audience needs to see you. We know Felipe's gonna say it. No, but no, I think there's something like really fascinating. And yeah, and also you should mention your residency that you're doing right now, so people get a chance to see that, right?
Yes.
Which is in Pioneer Works, right? When is that up until?
When? Where?
The Pioneer Works interview.
Oh, yeah. So I'm working with Tommy Martinez in Pioneer Works in tech. I'm doing the tech residency. So it's been amazing because with Tommy Martinez, we are doing this stock ticker display that has taken some, like we've been working it for a few months now. And it's going to be part of this choreography of the show. So we're planning on something to show here soon.
That's wonderful. Anyway, Ignacio, I'm super happy. I love that you have like a huge and super supportive fan club that has been chatting all over during our live. Thank you everybody for participating, for your questions, but also for the encouragement. I hope everybody gets a chance to see your work at Pioneer Works, but also later in the Canada show, and hopefully soon in more and more places. I think there's something very interesting and very focalized that you're doing about the credit cards, and at the same time about this very serious, this fun, but at the same time very serious, like research into the history of economy and politics in the Americas that I think is really unique. And I love how it's been very consistent. So thank you for sharing that work with us.
Thank you, Aimé and Natalia, for the invitation.
Thank you so much.
It's been fun. Thank you.
All right.